How did you get to New York City?
I got to New York City because I graduated from the University of Maryland and I got a job offer working at the headquarters of a bank, and now I'm a financial analyst. You
were telling me before we started recording that you've been an artist for a long time. Tell me about that. When did it start?
It started when I was a kid, to be honest. Like, you know how like everyone kind of just starts like finger painting or like doodling on like random paper, like on their walls, which like I probably shouldn't have been doing. And I kind of just fell in love with it. It's something I never really grew out of. And ever since then, I've just like been teaching myself how to draw. I watched YouTube videos as a kid. And that kind of like developed into me having like a little bit of an obsession with it. Like I remember when I was a kid, I would like try and draw portraits a lot. And sorry.
No worries.
And they always looked really bad. Like they looked so bad. And I think a little bit about like that is it became a goal of mine to actually become good at what I was doing.
What were your favorite things to draw when you were growing up? What do you remember being into?
Well, for one, definitely the portraits. I tried to get into landscaping, not that good. I was very focused on surrealism from a young age. Like I remember like looking through my sketchbooks from when I was in middle school. A lot of it was like surreal portraits specifically. Just anything that seemed like a little outlandish, because I'm a very big fan of things like Tim Burton movies, for example. So like kind of like that whimsical side of things. And I like things that looked almost not real.
What did you like about Tim Burton? What drew you to that?
I really loved the art style and like kind of like the whimsical like world that he would create, and like just like how everything seemed a little bit real but also like not. Like one of my favorite like movies of all time is Big Fish. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Love Big Fish. Yeah.
I love Big Fish so much, and it's almost like a dream, and that's like the thing that I really love about art is it helps you like step into like a dream like world and like see things through someone else's eyes.
How seriously did you take art when you were growing up? I mean, I know eventually it became a huge part of your life, but was this always sort of a side component to your identity and personality, or were there times where it really became front and center, especially when you were super young?
Honestly, when I was like very, very young, I don't think it was like as big of a thing for me, like especially throughout elementary school. I kind of drew, but like not that much. I think middle school is when I started to get really, really into it. And I actually had been like looking at art schools that I wanted to apply to once I was like, you know, ready to apply to college and stuff like that. I was trying to build up a portfolio. That's all I would think about all the time. And then in high school, I feel like I kind of focused a little bit more on traditional careers, but I would say like the obsession really started when I was like the 7th, 8th grade, maybe. And from there on, I like tried to like do mixed media. I tried to like do other mediums, and really just see what I could come up with.
What happened in 7th or in 8th grade? Did something just sort of blossom in you, or the interest grew, or something else? How do you make sense of that time period being kind of the launching point?
I don't really think it was like a specific moment. I think I just had a lot of free time. Like, I wasn't really doing much.
That helps.
So I was just like, okay, like I guess I'll just like watch a bunch of videos. I remember I used to be really into like cartoons when I was a kid, like every other child in America, I guess. And I wanted to be like an animator for a little bit. And so I was like, I should probably get good at drawing. Never went down the animation path at all. I think I would have been awful at it. But it definitely helped because, again, like I'm very interested in like kind of creating another world with my art, and watching things and like watching animation specifically helped me with that.
Do you have artists in your family? Is this a genetic thing?
Okay, I actually kind of think it is because like I said, like no one's ever taught me how to draw. However, I do have artists in my family. My great-grandfather was an artist, but he was like an engineer, but like he did art, and we have like a bunch of his like paintings around our house and stuff like that. And then my grandma, also an artist, and that was like her career for a really long time. But she never taught me how to draw because like she wasn't like in the area when I was growing up, and she wasn't really around that much. But I like to think that it was almost like something that I just inherited, and I was kind of just like the person in the family to become the artist, because I feel like in every generation there was just an artist in the family.
I know you said you thought about going to art school. How seriously were you about pursuing that?
Oh, I was extremely serious. I actually applied to a couple of art programs and I applied to like scholarships for that. I did get into an art program at the University of Richmond. Then I ended up not going because number one, it was like super expensive, even with the scholarship that they had given me. And I think I like kind of weighed my options and I was like, it seems like the smartest route for me to take would to just be pursuing a degree in like business or something along those lines.
What made you come to that conclusion?
Mainly my parents. I like thought about it. I remember I was like having a conversation with them and they were like, what are you going to do with the art degree? And I was like, that's a good question. I have no clue. And
do you think in retrospect that was the right decision for you?
I think so. I feel like if okay, this is something I've actually like heard from other artists who I've like met since moving to the city, but a lot of them say like, if you go to art school, you might just end up producing art like everyone else, which I think is like a dilemma that a lot of artists face because like, I think the one thing that I really have going for me is like, no one's ever like told me no in terms of creativity just because it's like, I was the only one really overseeing it. So like if I did something that wasn't like technically correct, or like it didn't fit into a certain mold, no one was there to like kind of make that correction.
Yeah.
But I do think art school definitely has like its benefits and stuff like that. But having like a more traditional degree, I think also helps me focus on art and like approach it from like more of like a business perspective. Because if you're trying to be a full-time creative, like that's very important. And to kind of understand that world a little bit is like very useful. Like I don't think like going to school and graduating with my degree was a mistake at all.
So you don't go to art school. What do you study instead? What did you go into?
I studied a degree called OMBA, which is Operations Management and Business Analytics. So I guess it was more on the side of like overseeing things and also understanding like data sets and like finding commonalities in it. Just like a lot of like puzzle solving in a way.
Did you find that going into that field of study was relatively painful given that your heart was really in art? Or not necessarily?
I think towards the end, maybe, because I think that like starting out, I was very much like, oh my God, like I really need to pursue like a traditional career. And I was like really on top of that, to be honest. I had started recruiting for internships like very early in college, which is something that most people usually don't do. They wait until like their junior year. But I had started pretty much right away and I tried to get involved in like as much academic like extracurriculars as I could. I was really focused on like having fun in college for a while, at least like for the first half of it. And then I kind of loosened up and I was like, okay, time to like actually be a college student for once. But yeah, I don't know. Like I really, really wanted a career in research as well. So that was something that I was very focused on and that's something I wanted a lot. So when I was a junior or like the end of my junior year and like beginning of senior year, that's when I kind of became a little more uncomfortable.
Did you, I want to talk about the encouragement you got, especially before you came to New York, in the capabilities that you were indicating in the art world. Did you have people in your life that looked at what you did and were giving you positive reinforcement that you may have something here? Was that all internally generated for yourself? How did you gain the confidence eventually to believe there might be something here for you?
I think like even to this day, I'm still kind of having trouble wrapping my head around it in terms of like, I need to convince myself that it's going to work out. Like I do have like my moments of doubt, but like starting out, I remember like I posted my first video for like the account I have now without telling anyone. And like all of my friends found it by chance because I actually had initially blocked them because I wanted to be secret about it. But I eventually did get like encouragement from like just random like strangers on the internet, which was like really helpful. I got encouragement from my friends once they found the account. But initially, a lot of it was just like me kind of taking a chance on myself because, you know, when I realized I was like graduating from college, I thought about like my life previously. And I was like, I always talked about like being an artist as a kid. And I always like said like I had these big dreams and I never really did anything with it. And that's why I kind of started to do art and take it seriously because I was like, I told myself I would do this and I never took action.
Tell me about the video.
Okay, so I remember it was actually before my law class. Like I was taking like this business law lecture. It was like required for everyone in my degree. And like, I remember waking up and I had like a drawing sitting on my desk in my apartment. And I was like, why don't I just like make a video? And like, I was literally just like, it took me like 2 seconds to film it. I said, hi, my name's Ella. I am an abstract artist and I create things based off of sound. I showed a few of my pieces. And then that video ended up doing like really well on Instagram and TikTok. And then I started getting like commission requests and people started like asking me like, oh, like, do you do art shows? You know, like, can I buy this piece? And I never really expected any of that because it was just such a spur of the moment thing. I remember going to class and I didn't think anything of it. And then I came back and I checked my phone and it was already at like 200,000 views, which was like really crazy for me because I was like, I never expected this to happen.
So the commission requests you started getting, it sounds like you were pretty unprepared for the kind of feedback that you began to get from people online. What did you do next? So you have this amazing success with this first video. Did you honor the interest in creating work for people? How did you move to the next phase with your interest in art and doing something about it?
So a big part of it was just pretending like I already knew what I was doing.
That's life.
And I was just kind of thrown into it because I was like, I have no one to reference on this. Like, I didn't know anyone who like had the same thing happen to them. And I was like, I guess I just have to start doing it. But you know, I graduated from business school and I was like, might as well put that knowledge to work. I started saying yes to things. I talked about commissions with people. And essentially I started out because people would like bring me their favorite songs and they would be like, can you make a drawing based off of this? And I would be like, yeah. And then I would do that. I would basically like take the song, visualize it to what I believed it would look like. I would run it by whoever was ordering the commission, finish it, and then send it out. And I just started doing that. And I've been doing it ever since.
The aspect of music and your work, I'd love to hear about what you mean when you say that. Like what is the relationship between the art you produce and the music that you hear? How do you think about that? What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so basically it stemmed from me starting to like play instruments when I was really young. I remember I think I was like 7 when I started playing the piano. Because my mom really wanted us to learn how to play the piano. So that's where that came from. And then when I was in the 3rd grade, I just randomly had an interest in the violin. They like brought it to like a class one day and they were like, is anyone interested in learning? And I was like, I am. I went home the same day and I was like, I want to be a violinist, Mom. And she was like, I don't know, I feel like you're going to give it up. And I ended up doing that up until I graduated high school. So I was learning the violin and the piano. That became like a huge part of my life. And at the same time, I was teaching myself how to draw. And I think because of that, the two kind of became very intertwined. And the more I played music and the more that I drew, I kind of started to visualize the music that I was playing. And that's where that came from.
What do you mean visualize?
Like, I think like the technical term for this would be synesthesia.
For sure.
I don't think I have synesthesia, but everyone's like, oh yeah, you probably do. I kind of just associate imagery with sound. So it's like sound is like very immersive. It takes you into like a different place. And like, I'm sure like you've experienced this where you're like, listen to like a piece and you'll be like, this is like very serene. And like usually imagine things that are associated with like something that would be soothing or calming. And that's essentially what it is for me. Like, I think I'm just overall someone with like a very vivid imagination. And that's where it also came in. But it used to be like more clear imagery and like not so much abstract work because I feel like my work now is a little bit chaotic in terms of what it looks like and it doesn't always make sense. But I think it took me a while to lean into that.
When people commission you for work that they want you to make, do they generally give you full carte blanche control to create whatever you think the visualization is? Do they give you guidance? How does that generally work?
The only guidance I've ever received was the song. So like I have like complete creative control over how it turns out.
Is the commission volume still there? I know there was this initial 200,000 view post. How has that evolved since that initial posting in terms of, you know, how that may turn into something you can, you know, potentially rely on?
Yeah, I usually get around like 5 requests a month, I would say, or at least I fulfill like maybe like 2 or 3. I honestly have rejected a number of commissions before just because I felt I wasn't the best person to fulfill whatever they wanted, because sometimes people approach me with like a little more instruction, or like it's something that I don't really think that I would want to finish, which I know is like kind of bad to turn down business, but I don't want to give someone something and like make them pay for like a drawing that I'm not completely confident in myself. But I think like ever since like working my 9 to 5, it definitely has slowed things down a bit just because I have less time to keep up with like the commission requests I do get.
I'd love to hear about the habits you have when you are in the process of making something. What does that look like? I don't know how intentional you are about, you know, the time of day you do this, the amount of caffeine you drink before you start. How do you think about the habits that you're creating, if at all, when you are actually in the flow of making art?
So usually the way it works is because I like work all day, I come home and then I just draw until I go to sleep.
Whoa.
That's like my everyday life pretty much. But I remember like I started out by like just doing like commissions like early in the morning. Like sometimes I would wake up at like 6 a.m. and like draw a little bit before work and then go to work and then come back. But more recently I started just like going straight into it right after I came home.
You have a studio at your apartment? Would you work from home, or do you have a place you go to?
I just have my apartment. I have my bedroom.
Do you find that when you are actively involved in making something, there is a general, I don't know if joy is the right word, but flow state that is fairly consistent for you that you experience when you're doing that?
Yeah, I would say so. I think like when I start working on a piece, I also hate to leave things unfinished.
Yeah.
So I need to finish it. And if I don't, it like bothers me a lot. But yeah, I think like the consistency of having something that I'm working towards is like very comforting to me. I think I'm someone who really needs like a strict schedule. Like I'm not that spontaneous. So it's nice to be like, oh, I need to do this when I get home. And then that's what I do for the night. Because I feel like I get very uncomfortable when I'm like just sitting around doing nothing for too long.
I know you're relatively new to New York. I'd love to hear about what coming here has been like, especially as it relates to the artist community, what it's meant for you to be here as somebody who is an aspiring artist. Anything you'd like to share, I'd love to hear about what the New York experience so far has been like for you.
I think moving to New York has made my art evolve a little bit more in a way that like I'm really leaning into like the weird aspect of it. Just because like beforehand, my art, when I started doing like these abstract drawings, I would base a lot of them in realism because that's what I tried to teach myself how to do when I was younger. And that's what I kind of ran with. And then as I've been in New York, I've seen a lot of like really cool pieces. I've been exposed to like at a lot of like nice shows. And seeing other people be so free with their art and their voice, it's kind of also allowed me to do that myself. And in the way like I work on pieces that like kind of only make sense to me now. Like I like to take more risks now than I initially did, and try and like allow myself to also make bad art, because that's something I talk to a lot of artists about as well. Like you have to be okay with making really bad art that you're not proud of, that will probably never see the light of day. And then from there you kind of just like learn through trial and error. So I think like I'm almost like becoming like a student all over again.
I'd love to hear about what the best things are about being in New York as an artist. If it's, in your mind, mostly like collaborating with fellow artists, with exposing yourself to a wider range of art, meeting artists in the sense of being in a place where there are just so many people who are pursuing the arts. I know, again, it's only, I think, less than a month or less than a year in for you. What's your gut feel as to what has been the best aspect of being here for you, as in terms of your progression as an artist in general?
I think honestly, like the best thing about like being here, like for my art career, is not even necessarily being exposed to the art, but just being exposed to the different types of people that you meet in your day-to-day life. Like I have met like some of the best people that just like have amazing like life stories, and like they're just genuinely such good people since I've been here, and like they have like such diverse backgrounds, and it's like all of those experiences and just being able to learn from other people from like a life perspective and like who they are, it really helps to kind of take a step back from your own art and understand how to like take in the world around you. And I think that's something that I was kind of missing when I was a student, because like, you know, when you're in college, you're free to an extent. But you're still kind of sheltered in the sense, because like you're sticking to the schedule, you're always around the same people. But now I get to like hear about how other people live, and I get to see like their ideas, and sometimes they even give me input on my art, even if they're not artists themselves, which I think is always welcome. I think it's a really important thing to be able to take criticism, because the fact of the matter is like not everyone is going to like you, not everyone is going to like your art. And I think that's something that, you know, sometimes people have a little bit of trouble getting their head around. But I think it's always very important to kind of see where you fall short in general, like in all aspects of life, just to like become like a better person and a better artist.
I don't know if an example comes to mind, but is there a piece of constructive criticism you've received about your work that has stuck with you as being probably correct, or has changed your perspective on what you're trying to do or how you're trying to make art?
Honestly, yeah. So I remember I met this man who was from California, and he was like, he told me like he was very, very impressed with my art. And he really liked it, but he told me he looked at it and he was like, I like where you're going, but I think that you're not free. And I like hearing that initially, I was very confused, because I was like, what do you mean? Like, what is that supposed to mean? But he was like, I feel like you have a lot of work to do in terms of like freeing up like your, I guess like your mindset and how I was living my life, and just like learning to kind of grow into who I am as a person, and understanding that like I shouldn't be putting so many limits on my creative process and like what my art represents. And he's like, you're probably going to reach a much like higher level of, I guess, artistry once you're completely free. And I feel like I'm still figuring out what that meant. Like, he didn't really explain it much, but
what has been the best way for you to meet other artists? It sounds like that colliding with other artistic minds and just the quality of the people you've met has been important. What have been the best environments or ways to meet people for you so far being here?
Honestly, I would say probably just like day-to-day life. Like sometimes you're just like walking around, and then you run into like, you know, this cool like thing happening on the street, and then you turn to the person next to you and you're like, oh wow, like, you know, you just start talking about whatever is going on in front of you, and then you learn about their lives. I remember like I met this man who was like also an artist, because I was staying in an Airbnb when I first moved here, and the bottom of that Airbnb caught fire. So I just had like an hour-long conversation with him about like pursuing art when I was just standing there. And then he walked away because he actually didn't live in the building.
Wow. I know I like to talk to artists who are doing the thing about just the day-to-day economic reality of living here. We talked a little bit about this before we started recording, about how expensive New York is. How do you think about that? I know you're working a 9-to-5 at this point to help pay your bills, but it sounds like that maybe you may at some point pursue your calling, I think, with a little bit more intensity. Has it been a real grind for you to be able to support yourself here? How are you thinking about that, especially as it pertains to the future with some potential changes that might be coming your way?
I would say like every day, to be honest, I get scared about it.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you always get like cold feet about like big decisions in your life, and like this is definitely one of them. And like I would be lying if I said it didn't keep me up at night, because like I'm very used to the stability of having the job that I do now. And I think like in a weird way, I also like just very much believe that I'm able to pursue my dreams, which again might sound super delusional because I live in New York City. But like, for example, I think like a person who's had like a really big impact on me is my roommate, in the sense that like she has built her career in hospitality from the ground up. And like, she's always just like had this mentality of like, you know, like no matter what, like I'm going to be able to figure it out. And I'm not someone who really thinks like that, or at least I didn't before meeting her. And, you know, like seeing her figure stuff out and like be very encouraging of like the path that I'm on, like it gives me a lot of comfort, because I kind of feel like everything's going to be all right. And like, I know like now I pretty much work all the time, but that's like completely by choice. Like I work my 9 to 5. I create art, I do commissions, and then like I'm also a tattoo apprentice. So I'm always like in Brooklyn doing that. And like I feel like because I'm very used to this schedule now, it wouldn't be hard to just do that, but like in a different field.
Like the work ethic has been set.
Yeah. It's just a matter of what am I doing?
What are your favorite places to consume art in the city? I mean, if somebody listens to this who doesn't live here, what are the great venues in your mind to be, an appreciator of all of the amazing artwork that's here in the city?
Honestly, I would say that, okay, this is like a very like, I guess like standard answer, like just walk around the street. You'll see like great things everywhere. There's art in the subways. There is art, like there's like statues around like your neighborhoods. You can look at buildings and there's artistry in that. I think like one of the great things about also being a tattoo apprentice is I see art just like on a different canvas. I think a lot of people actually are very quick to reject things like that. Like people themselves are also art. And I think like talking about being a tattoo apprentice and like starting that more recently, I've actually heard a lot of like, I guess like negativity around that world just because a lot of people don't really understand it. But the thing is like, there's a lot of culture rooted in that. And you get to see like these very, very talented people who have trained very hard to do what they do. And it's really great to see like the inspiration of like street style and things like that. And like, I guess like more modern art. I mean, like, of course, like I like traditional things like I've gone to like the Met, I've gone to the MoMA, things like that. And I love seeing that. But I think because we're in New York, the best place to see art, especially for free, is just by walking around and you see it everywhere. Like, especially like I was grocery shopping at Trader Joe's and I saw someone wearing like a really cool shirt. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, where'd you get that? Like, that's insane. He was like, I'm actually like a designer. I create clothes. And like, it's things like that. It's like the smaller things that you don't necessarily think you're gonna like walk in somewhere and be like, oh my gosh, like that's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
We talked a little bit about this before we started recording about the I think the obvious changes that are happening in our culture with technology and AI. I don't know how much you've thought about this as it pertains to your very early career, but how are you thinking, if at all, about how AI might affect what you love to do? And maybe it's that it won't. But I'd be curious to know if that is on your radar, if you think that that might be something worth considering for you, for artists in general, and how somebody who's aware of that might best approach these oncoming changes that are occurring.
Yeah, so I actually have been asked if I use AI for my art multiple times. And I always say no because I'm very against using AI for art. I don't think that it's needed in that space. But I think that there's definitely the danger of having art like mine, especially that is generated by sound, kind of be impacted by the rise in AI. But I also think that a lot of people see the humanity behind my art because it's more than just like, oh, I like the way that this song sounds. This is what my art looks like. It's like I definitely root it a lot in like my own lived experiences and like maybe music that I was listening to at the time of like something happening in my life, which is like pretty much like all my art. And so like because of that, I think it would be very hard for AI to kind of replicate something like my art just because it's very abstract and like a big part of why it looks the way it looks is because of the humanity behind it.
I always close with the same question, and we've talked a little bit about this, but I like to get artists' view on the word success, and I think I have a rough sense of how you might answer this, but if we talked again in a year or two, and this is probably relevant to how you're thinking about, you know, the next phase of your career, but when you think about the word success as it applies to your work, your life, but especially your professional career, your artistic interests, what does a successful life and career look like to you? How do you think about that word?
I think for one, definitely like we kind of have to like address the elephant in the room. I need money to live.
You're not alone.
So like, I guess like for sure having like a stable income and something that like I would be able to live comfortably. I don't need to be like the richest person to ever exist, but I definitely like to afford a place to live and some food. That would be great. But in terms of success, I guess just like being able to impact others and learn from other artists, even in a small way. Like this is like very early on when I like started my social media account, and the reason that I actually kept going, because like if I'm being completely honest, I don't love posting on social media just because it can be a lot sometimes. But I would get like these messages from people and they would be like, your art really inspired me to like start creating again and like start like really thinking outside of the box and becoming confident in like my ability to create, even if I'm like not the best at it. Or like they'll see like my background and they'll be like, oh, like I also don't come from an artistic background. And, you know, all of a sudden like I want to get into drawing, or I want to get into music, I want to get into fashion. And just inspiring that sort of like risk taking and like understanding that you really can do whatever you put your mind to. And like I love that people come to me with that. Like it's one of the most rewarding things about doing what I'm doing, is just being able to kind of allow people to relate through my art and bringing people together. Like at the end of the day, that's really what I want to accomplish with my art.
I'd love to sneak in one final question about Instagram and social media in general. It sounds like it kind of cuts both ways, where it's both like opened up incredible doors and opportunities, but also, is, I think the phrase you use, it's a lot. What's a lot about it, and how overall do you come down on thinking about these platforms?
I think like the reason it's just a lot for me is because I think like a big reason that a lot of people kind of pay attention to my art is because of like the person behind it. I think that's always the most intriguing thing, you know, for me when I'm looking at other artists, is like who made this and why. And that is the like people can like look at my art and be like, oh, that's cool, but no one's really going to care about it unless they know who made it. And so like it's just a lot because I'm not really used to being perceived on that level. Like I remember the first time I posted a video and like people from my school who I had class with like knew about it. I was just like, oh my God, you saw me like in a context outside of class. What do I do with this? And I think like in my day-to-day life, like if you just like saw me on the street and like you tried to talk to me, I would probably be very like shy about it. And I wouldn't be like much of a conversationalist, just because like I think a lot of times my social skills are not where they need to be. But like, I don't know, like I'm just like not as equipped to like, I guess like be more of a public figure. Not like saying like I'm like a huge like big shot or whatever, but like it's just something I'm not used to.
And for people that are curious, and that this maybe is one of the few opportunities they might be able to learn a bit more about you, what's worth sharing? What would you like, you know, your audience to be aware of, outside of just the fact that you don't have a traditional artistic background and that you kind of went for it? What else is something you might want to share with them?
I think like the biggest thing for me is like understanding that you're always going to second guess yourself no matter what. And this is something I even talk with like for my friends. Like I had a conversation the other day with one of my friends, and we were chatting about like pursuing like creative careers and stuff like that, and how like scary it can be. And for me especially, I think like there wasn't much encouragement to pursue a creative career, especially when I was younger, even if I like did show an interest in it. And you really do have to be your own cheerleader in that sense. You have to be able to accept criticism. You have to be able to refine it. You have to be able to kind of like accept whatever is coming your way and like overcome the hurdles that you face, even if you're doing it alone. And that takes practice. Like I still go through that to this day, where like I am working in art and like I think to myself, like, this is so stupid. Like, why would I pursue this? Like, this is like such a dumb risk I'm taking. But you also have to be able to kind of talk yourself out of that if it's what you really, really want. And having that confidence in yourself is key. Like, it's extremely vital to your success, because I think like a lot of the times, like when you hear about like people saying like, oh, I don't pursue like art anymore because like it was a failed career. Like, you have to be able to fall flat on your face in front of other people and like look like an idiot. And that's definitely how I felt a lot of times in my career. And like just knowing that is extremely, extremely important.
But that's part of the process.
It's always a part of the process. Yeah.
Ella, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.